Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we need to go back and we need to look at the new Labyrinth card that was revealed yesterday. Long story short, she kind of has like a tour guide-esque effect. It's a little more specific, but also gets a little more generic in other ways. So really cool. We're going to read over that. I'm going to actually go through all the options I found. I literally just went through every single level 4 or lower Fiend monster that I thought could apply to this card and was looking for what worked. And so yeah, that's what we're doing today. I have my list, and but first we need to go through her and just restate what we found out yesterday. So this is Labyrinth Servant Ariane, level 4 Dark Fiend effect monster, 18 air attack, 1100 defense, 2 once per turn effects. First one reads, send one normal trap from your hand or set on your field to the graveyard is cost to special summon a level 4 or lower fiend from your deck in defense position. Keep in mind, this is any level 4 or lower fiend. Any single one. It's really good. And there's no restriction on it. Tour Guide negates a monster. This doesn't have any restriction like that. So really, really cool. The only drawback here is that you have to send a normal trap. So you can only really facilitate this card in the kind of deck that would be playing a healthy number of normal traps so that this card consistently does what it wants to do. But still, pretty cool. Second effect is just if a monster leaves the field due to the effect of a normal trap, you can draw one card, then apply the following, either special summon a fiend monster from your hand or directly set one spell or trap from your hand. That's not really what we're going to be focusing on today. That's pretty simple. You'll be playing this in a trap deck anyway. This will be super triggerable with, just good generic normal traps that remove stuff from the field, obviously. So let's get into our targets. So these are in alphabetical order, not like a particular order in terms of usability and how good they are. We're just going alphabetical just to keep it raw, just keep it keep it right. So obviously we start off here with Absolute King Backjack. If you don't know about this guy, when he's sent to the graveyard, he lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck and place them in any order. Then as a quick effect on the opponent's turn, you can banish him to excavate the top card of your deck. If it's a normal trap, you set it and it can be activated that turn, or you mill the top card if it's not a normal trap. Really, really cool. It lets you just set a trap during your opponent's turn and it's immediately live, which is really strong. Or just like something like Trap BA, mill a Scarm for follow-up, mill a whatever, mill a Farfa for interruption, mill an Alich for interruption. So really, really cool card, and this card already has synergy with the deck being a Fiend and whatnot. So definitely something to look at for sure, because you just summon him, make a link 2, use his effect, he's going to get another follow-up trap on the opponent's turn, and maybe you made Verte. So you're ending on DP plus a trap off of 1.5 cards from hand. Not too bad. Next up here, we have Arima, the Wicked Ward, getting into some layer support here. Really cool. Arima's on-field effect is what we're looking at here. You summon him out off of this card. You can use him to tribute her. That's ideally what you'd be doing. Because if he tributes any other card that's not himself, he can just search any dark monster with 2,000 or more defense. So that could be King of the Heavenly Prison or Lord of the Heavenly Prison. That could be Diabolos, which would actually be able to trigger and summon itself immediately. So then you go Diabolos tribute Arima to rip a card out of your opponent's hand, and then like you just keep going and like there was either 1.5 card that hand ripped your opponent, set up Diabolos engrave, and maybe if the trap you sent was something that had an effect engrave, you're kind of just getting really good value. Not terrible, like interesting. Next up here we have Alice. This one's not very proactive. That's the problem. Alice only gets her effect to reborn something from grave if she is normal summoned, not special summoned, but she still has like an effect where if she's destroyed by battle or by an opponent's card, she can revive something. So theoretically, if it's not turn 1, you could summon this card out and then just attack into something just to like float into a Lilith or whatever other card you might be looking at. So just something to note, nothing too crazy, but it does have some synergy here. Next up is Barrier Statue of the Abyss. If you're playing a more like raw, just like control version of this deck, I could actually see this being a thing, especially if you want to play Ties of the Brethren in a pure Labyrinth build, because you've got 2 good normal summons, and then being able to just cheat out Barrier Statue is pretty good because your whole deck is dark. So really good. I know it's like the worst Barrier Statue because dark is just super common in Yu-Gi-Oh! But a lot of decks aren't fully dark. They still need to go into non-darks just to get to their generically dark extra deck monsters, which this can like potentially lock them out of, and especially with the support of some good trap cards, completely lock them out. Really cool. Next up here we have Dark Resonator. Nothing too crazy here other than like, I guess it can facilitate a Hulk play, but do I really want like a 2-card Hulk play? Probably not. Whatever. I mean, it's just something, or it could be a Synchro 7 play. Just summon this out, make Yazi, pop a card, go into Mare, make a Link play. You have to play bricks for it, but it's just something to note. It's usable. There's no restriction, so like, you can go in anything once you summon this card out. Dune Octhros. This one's really cool. So this card says, if you sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a level 8 Fiend from your deck to your hand. This is one of the reasons why I was kind of bummed when I saw that the new Labyrinth boss monster does not have a clause that summons itself from the hand. Because I was like, dang, if it did, Octhros would be awesome. Like if it was like banish 2 Fiends from grave, then like literally just going like Torgod summon Octhros, link them off for, let's say, Verte. The Octhros triggers to search her. She could banish Octhros and the tour guide to summon herself, and then you could Verte for DPE. So like just that 1-card combo gets you DPE plus the Labyrinth boss monster on field, but unfortunately it doesn't have like an effect to summon itself. You have to be getting it out with like the other effects in the deck. But still interesting, still keeping my eye on this for whenever we do get like level 8 Fiends that are like spicy, because this card is a pretty interesting generic search. Duke Shade, this one's a little more specific. His biggest thing is that when he's normal or special summoned, he can target a level 5 or higher dark in grave and add it back to hand. So yeah, it does take setup, but normally you want to be using this card like as early as possible. It's fine. I figured it was worth mentioning, but nothing too crazy. Fiendish Rhino Warrior. This is another one that's kind of interesting, I guess, because like you summon it and like if you summon Scarm, Scarm just destroys itself, so you can't even make a Link 2. But if you play Rhino Warrior and Scarm, you could go summon Rhino Warrior out of the deck, link those 2 for Verte, then trigger Rhino Warrior to send Scarm, and then Scarm gets you a search. So right there, you know, 1.5, 2-card Verte into DPE with a follow-up search off of Scarm. But if you just play Scarm, it'll pop itself as soon as it hits the field because you control a non-BA. So you got to be careful with that. This guy kind of allows you to work around that a little bit. Is it worth playing the extra brick? Probably not, but it is something worth noting for sure. There's definitely synergy there. Grand Maju, this is another interesting one. It takes setup, right? You obviously have to get enough cards banished, and it's your cards, not total cards. So doesn't matter what your opponent lets you get into, but it's interesting. I mean, it lets you just cheat out Grand Maju, but ideally in a Grand Maju deck, you don't want to be playing normal traps anyway. So meh, just hit or miss, like not the greatest. Infernity Archfiend, this one's very specific as well, because when it's special summoned, it can add any Infernity card from your deck to your hand, but you must have no cards in your hand to activate this. So it's not the end of the world, because you can, obviously, if you're playing a trap deck anyway, you could set all your hand or whatever. And Infernities are generally pretty good at getting out of the hand anyway, but that could not be the worst thing in the world, is like just summon this from deck, search an Infernity card, and I guess play from there. Not the worst. Infernoid Decatron. This one's really good because we all know how like Infernoids work. But the question is like, do Infernoids play enough traps? You might say no, but I believe their trap cards are like pretty dang searchable. So that is the one like saving grace there. The question is just like, is it only like good in a theoretically and like not actually as good as you think? That'll be the real question, but okay, Decatron is really good. So, you know, I'm about it for sure. Next up is Lilith. This might be the #1 card we need to look at here. No cap. Like, seriously, use this card, pitch a trap to summon Lilith. The only downside with Lilith specifically is that this does summon the monster in defense position. Oh, and this is something that I didn't mention with Alice. So that's my fault with Alice mentioning her before. She would be summoned in defense mode, which is 2000, but she wouldn't be able to attack into something to kill herself immediately to get a search. So keep that in mind. But that's also the downside of Lilith, is she'll be at 0 defense. So you would summon her from the deck, but you could immediately just go Lilith, tribute her, the girl that summoned her out, then get another trap to replace the trap you had immediately, and you still keep Lilith on field. So especially if you see this with a copy of Lair of Darkness, insanely strong, but also you'll have Lilith with herself on field to be able to tribute herself to get another trap on the opponent's turn attempting to grind. So I always talk about, like, with Lair of Darkness support, one of the biggest things I've always wanted is just easier access to Lilith. Tour Guide doesn't do it right because she negates Lilith's effects. I need to be able to get those traps, so I always wanted cards that get us to Lilith, and this does it. Is it the best possible way to do it? Probably not, but it's still pretty good, all things considered, especially since it's from a different archetype. So we'll take it. Next up is Magical Musketeers. We can just consider all the Musketeers in here. The one problem I have with the Musketeers here is, like, one, they play spells and traps, and they primarily want to play spells, so I don't know if you'd even be playing enough traps to make it work. And two, there's almost no reason to do this play unless you already have activatable spells that can, like, trigger the musket you summon from decks effect immediately. Other than that, it's just, like, not worth it at all. So it seems like there's synergy, but, like, I think, like, practically it just wouldn't end up working out right. Sangan is definitely one of the better ones, like Doomdog Octhros, but just so much more generic, right? Just summon out Sangan, right? Link him off with the girl to get into Verte or whatever other Link 2 play you want to go for, and then Sangan search you either a hand trap or a follow-up or whatever you want. It's really, really good, really versatile search there. I think Sangan's one of the better targets. Bow, shout. Scarm, we already mentioned this is Fiendish Rhino Warrior. I think by itself it's not quite as good. None of the other BAs work very well either, but it is a follow-up search. It's a little slow for modern day standards, but it is still a good card nonetheless, so definitely got to keep it in mind. Token Collector's a really interesting one. You could literally just go, like, effect, summon Token Collector from the deck, link them into Verte. Token Collector is now loaded up into Grave, so if you do play against a deck that summons normal monsters, Token Collector, or tokens, I mean, Token Collector punishes them. So, like, if you're in the Sword Soul matchup, they just have to, I don't even know if they can beat DPE plus Token Collector in Grave, because that's already really good. So definitely good value in certain matchups. Unchained Twin Serrama. This one's cool because Unchained already does like to play traps, and mainly normal traps. So being able to, like, theoretically pitch one of the Unchained traps from hand or field to summon Serrama from the deck, then you can use Serrama's effect to set the trap you sent back to the field and then pop either the girl, if you want to keep the trap, or the trap itself, and then the trap will summon another Unchained monster out of the deck. And, like, there you go, get to the Link 2. It's kind of consistency. I don't know if it's really the best. I think you do need to open it in, like, kind of particular hands, but that's pretty cool. Usually you can't even use Serrama turn 1. So being able to actually get access to him turn 1 is pretty cool for sure. So I like that a lot. And that's it. There you go. Alphabetical order. There's some really cool utilizations here. There's a couple generic ones like the Sangan, like the Octhros and stuff, but I do think the biggest ones are, like, archetype wise. I guess the Unchained one is interesting, but I don't know how good the synergy really is. I do think the tour guide, or not the tour guide, the Lair of Darkness is definitely really good synergy. Infernoid is really interesting with Decatron because they can get their trap pretty easily. And also, I guess that's mainly it for the archetypes. I was going to say Backjack, but he's more of a generic one. But I guess, I don't know. I guess if any deck you're playing this in is going to have a good amount of normal traps. So Backjack's just probably, might be overall the best option aside from Lilith, just because theoretically you'd only be playing this in a deck that plays, 15 to 20 normal traps anyway. And this guy is like a guaranteed extra interruption on the opponent's turn, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, overall, I really like it. I think this card is sweet. I think this card is, you read it and you're like, wow, it's so generic. It really only ends up helping a couple of specific decks because it needs to play a lot of traps. But hey, I love those specific decks, so I'm not mad. But yeah, there you go. That's what we're doing today. Hopefully this gave you a good little view of all the best cards you can be summoning off of the new girl. She is awesome. I can't wait to actually get this archetype. I'm definitely most excited for Labyrinth from this set, Tactical Masters, but I think the whole set is pretty cool. I think Valiants have some a little bit of traction with the pendulum stuff. I do think Mr. Rune might have some traction with some rogue strategies like Magical Musketeers and stuff, but this one for me is obviously just so right up my alley. I love it. So There you go. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me down the line, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.